What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're continuing our 32-team 7-round mock draft series by looking at the Houston Texans. And I'm so impressed with myself that this is the first rebuild. I'm in that mindset. The first, I guess kind of is a little bit of a rebuild that they're going into, but the first episode of the mock draft where there was a trade after I made the whole mock draft. They acquired Brandon Cooks, where they gave up a couple picks. I wasn't going to redo my entire mock draft just for this stupid organization, and I say that as someone that generally enjoys watching them play, but just get rid of Bill O'Brien. He's ruining your team. You got rid of DeAndre Hopkins to a team with a top 10 pick, and you didn't get that top 10 pick. Like, even if you had to give DeAndre Hopkins and something, like DeAndre Hopkins and a third rounder to get that first round pick, you got an aging running back that, you know, maybe, even if you get, like, David Johnson from 3 years ago, is it still worth it? Most likely not. Pay the man. Just pay the man. And it almost feels like if they had an actual general manager in place, they would have been like, whoa. Are we seriously having to pick between DeAndre Hopkins and Bill O'Brien? Because if that's the case, ass chin is gone. But either way, before we get in this mock draft, that this is the only mock draft that, you know, everything's not going to line up because of the Cooks trade. I did put Cooks on this roster just so we can kind of, you know, break it down. And I do talk about the Cooks trade as I make the picks, but obviously some of the picks they don't possess. And I still want to give you guys that full mock draft. So it's just a little bit weird. But we'll get into it. Looking at the roster and how we should try to help them out. So they definitely need like a, you know, maybe a late round running. Obviously you're good at quarterback. But between Duke Johnson, you know, if healthy, that's, you know, you have your guy that can do it all, and then you have more of your receiving back. I still would probably want to add in another running back here. Maybe not one of my premier picks, but probably day 3 at wide receiver. You got a lot of speed. Brandon Cooks, Kenny Stills, Will Fuller. You got Randall Cobb, who's veteran, but it can, you know, give you some okay snaps from the slot. Kiki Kute's been underdeveloped, not exactly reached the levels, I think. I mean, he's shown some flashes for sure. But even that, man, he still is a guy that uses his speed more predominantly. So I think you could add maybe another reliable receiver that, you know, maybe speed's not his strength, but he's more of a technician. Flipping to the offensive line, you got Tunsil, who's solid, Sharpen, who's solid. Could look at a center. I don't know how Fulton's average. You know, I think you probably could add someone on the interior of this offensive line, if not just, you know, slowly build up some depth there. Titus Howard looked pretty good before he got hurt at right tackle. So I think you're good at tackle. And I would look at maybe, you know, some picks here, beefing up the interior. At tight end, you know, how about Fells, man? What do you have, like 8-9 touchdowns, something crazy like that? Having a breakout year at 33. Again, it's a weird position. Doesn't feel like they're getting a lot of development from their young players at the tight end spot. So maybe, you know, take another swing at a tight end if you're the Houston Texans. But ultimately, on the offense, I think it's continuing to add more upside, more developmental guys on the offensive line, and maybe a younger technical receiver that could help them out, or a tight end as well. Flipping to the defense, front 3. You got a combination here. I don't know why I hate the depth charts, but you got J.J. Watts. Yeah, you got him. At nose tackle, things get a little up in the air there for sure. Probably could look at bringing in a nose tackle. Because you got Timmy Jernigan, former of the Eagles. He played 3-4 DN when he was with Baltimore, so that's probably where he's going to compete for snaps with Amenahu. But yeah, I don't know. Blackson maybe done. It's one of those things where if you're building a roster, especially with J.J. Watt on the front 3, you kind of can go cheap. But now J.J. Watt's no spring chicken. He's 30. We got to be 31 next season. Maybe you start thinking about going BPA and getting his successor, having your future-proofing at that defensive end spot. So they can go anywhere. I think anywhere on the defensive line here, the front 3 could be helpful. Again, they could go for another corner. Bradley Roby was really, really good for them last season, but they're still trying to find their identity. They got Conley, Hargrave. They're just getting guys that have been bouncing around. And, you know, maybe they're going to be okay, maybe not. No more Jonathan Joseph in that secondary. So I think corner's definitely another spot that they could go. Reed solid at safety. Probably could use another strong safety. Gibson's, what, 30? He's going to be 30, so want to get a little bit younger there. Linebacking core inside, obviously, with Cunningham and McKinney. You're solid, merciless. Get out there and age a little bit, but had a really solid year last season, stepping up and filling in the shoes and the void that Jadeveon Clowney left. But probably could use another edge rusher as well here from an outside linebacker standpoint. But if you're looking at glaring needs, you know, I'll tell you right now, when you get into the mock draft, this is the one mock draft that's just getting put up because, I'm sorry, you messed everything up by trade for Brandon Cooks. Because where I had them drafting a wide receiver a little bit earlier, I probably would have had them use that pick on a corner. So that being said, I tried my best, Texan fans, and there's definitely some solid picks in there that I think you guys will enjoy. So let's get into it. The 7-round mock draft, old before they got Cooks mock of the Houston Texans. Let's get it. And at pick 40, the Houston Texans are on the clock. This was actually kind of a weird mock draft. I will state once we get into it, I made this mock draft, obviously completed it all before they made the trade for Brandon Cooks. But even then, when we get to some wide receivers, they still need more wide receivers. So it makes sense. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into it. At pick 40, out of the Houston Texans, starting things off by drafting Marlon Davidson, defensive end from Auburn, 6'3", 305. J.J. Watt is not going to last forever. He's 31. He obviously has had struggle with injuries, seems to be back to form, but he's 31. That wall is coming. I think a guy like Marlon Davidson can work in rotationally, but long-term, it's going to be him and Omenahu on that defensive line. Relentless motor makes those guys around him better by taking on blocks. And I think really drafting Marlon Davidson here is future-proofing that defensive end spot for Houston. He had 12.5 TFLs, 7.5 sacks last year in 2019. A lot of scouts, there's some murmurs that he could potentially sneak up into the first round. Like, that's how highly regarded it is at that defensive end spot. But I think if I'm Houston, let's just go BPA in this draft. And getting future beyond J.J. Watt at that defensive end spot, I think it can't go wrong there. Going to the second round pick at 57, I was letting Terrell Lewis, edge rusher from Alabama, 6'5", 260. Drafting him on potential here. Lewis is an explosive edge rusher. Definitely needs to refine his pass rush moves, but the upside just screams off tape. He could be a Sam, he could be a Jack, either or. I think he played Sam at Alabama, but I think he could really line up at either outside linebacker spot. More so, you'd want to be pushing Brendan Scarlett and not Merciless, who actually looked pretty solid last season. But, for 3-4 years, Terrell Lewis could look back upon as a steal of the draft because of his athletic profile. And it's all going to fall on the onus on Houston being able to develop him. He had 11.5 TFL, 6 sacks last year for Alabama, but you could just see the potential oozing. And another guy, kind of like Marlon Davidson, there have been murmurs he could potentially sneak into the first round. So you're getting guys that are in that conversation for being in the first round, and you're getting that with 2 second-round picks. Looks and sounds pretty good to me. Go to the third round. Again, this mock draft was made well in advance before Brandon Cooks' trade. They could look at corner here, but I have them selecting in pick 90 in the third round, Van Jefferson, wide receiver from Florida, 6'1", 200 pounds. One of the smoothest route runners in this year's draft class, can be everything they hoped Kiki Kute would have been in and out of that slot. He brings reliability. He complements the speed options they currently have. Right now, they have a lot of proven speed. Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller, Kenny Stills on the outside. But Kiki Kute has been inconsistent, struggled to stay healthy. Feels like they lost confidence in him. A guy like Van Jefferson, day one, he'd be able to eat off his plate. He'd be able to steal the food off his plate and steal his spot on the depth chart. I think Van Jefferson is a Gator fan. Obviously, if you look at the production, it's not going to scream. Florida has not had a particularly great passing offense, but I do think we're putting some good wide receivers in. Tyree Cleveland a little bit later, bring some good speed. But I think Van Jefferson is a route runner. He was a transfer from Ole Miss. He was really damn good last year. Just finds ways to get open. I think he's going to be a really nice complement to the speed options they have there in Houston. Going to the fourth round to pick 111, I was letting Logan Stenberg, guard from Kentucky, 6'6", 320, powerful mauler on the inside that has the potential to win the starting gig right away if he has a good training camp. I'm looking kind of like Zach Fulton. Could look for a cheaper upgrade there. He's a total people mover with great run blocking. Needs to show up his pass pro, but I think right now, for the inside, you got the dude from Northern Illinois. Last year, Max Sharping, he was a tackle, but you slide him into guard. Really good pick, but I think more so on the interior, go and solidify that. You're going to hope Tunsil, he's going to probably hold you over the fire, and you're going to pay him ridiculous money, but Titus Howard looked solid before he got banged up. I think Sharping's going to be good. Laramie Tunsil's going to be good. This is an offensive line that has to get better. And I think a guy, honestly, like Stenberg could add some good competition to that right guard spot, and I think I'd probably rather him, and especially cheaper option when you're going to be paying Tunsil. You want to find some ways to cut corners, cut costs. A guy like Stenberg could fill in at that right guard spot, and then you can move on from Fulton's contract. Going to the fifth round, I pick 171. I was letting Josiah DeGuara, tight end from Cincinnati, 6'2", 240. He's undersized, but impressed big time during the drills of the combine. 2019 first-team AAC, 500 catches, 500 catches. Jesus, can you tell I've been recording these all day? 500 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. He could play tight end and is actually a really solid blocker. I remember he had a pretty high run block rate for PFF. And he could also be an effective fullback in the NFL. So either or. I mean, they took a flyer in the 7th round on a fullback. Gillespie, DeGuara, a little bit more of a tight end, inline tight end. You got big tight ends there. I mean, they're still trying to find their... Like Darren Fells had a breakout year. He's also 34. So Jordan Thomas, Akins, really old rookies, 28. He was drafted 2 years ago in the 3rd round. Cahale Warning, 3rd round pick. Still, it's not there. And you get a little bit more versatility. Like I said, DeGuara can move all over the field. A little bit of a more of an accomplished blocker. I think it's a solid move here for a team that really has no identity outside of a 34-year-old tight end. Going to the 7th round, we got finished up the Houston Texans mock draft with 3 7th-round picks. First up, at 240, I was letting A.J. Green, not that one, the corner from Oklahoma State, 6'1", 200 pounds, outside corner. Obviously, in the 7th round, we're getting outside corners. They are going to be incredibly raw and not ready to play. But he's an outside corner with great length. He has athletic limitations. Could see him maybe move to safety eventually. But the man skills are pretty sound, and he adds depth to a shaky at best Houston secondary. Again, they're just trying to see what sticks. The Garyon Conley trade. The Vernon Hargrave, picking up these guys that were former high-round picks. Bradley Roby's good. 2nd round pick, Lonnie Johnson Jr. If he can take another step, you could get some really solid reps from him. But outside of that, man, it's a wait and see. And the back-end depth does not get any prettier. So I think a guy like A.J. Green could bring affordable rookie contract and maybe a lot more upside than some of those depth corners on the Texans roster. Going to the next 7th round pick at 248, I was liking John Runyan, lineman from Michigan, 6'4", 305. Obviously, the name sounds familiar. He's the son of legendary Eagle lineman John Runyan. But he's a 2-time first-team Big Ten at right tackle. John Runyan's lack of length, though, could project him inside at guard at the NFL, where he adds depth and upside to an average at best interior lineman. Again, kind of like the Stenberg selection. You're really just trying to see what sticks. And I think getting a guy that has some tackle ability, I think best case scenario, it could be a swing tackle for you guys. Could be interior depth. Could be that 6th lineman that can play a lot of positions that you dress in case a guard or a tackle gets hurt in a pinch. He could come in and fill in nicely. But obviously, with his dad being what it is, brings a really good technical background, strong leader. But it really is just a tough projection at the NFL if he's going to be a tackle, swing tackle, or maybe have to move inside to guard. But still solid depth and a lot of proven production at college. Then finishing up in the draft, 7th round, 250 for the Houston Texans. I was letting QUARTNEY Davis, wide receiver from Texas A&M, 6'1", 200 pounds. A developmental wide receiver with very limited production, 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns in 31 games, but had a really good combine for a guy that's pretty big, 6'1", 200 pounds, running a 4.54, who should compete for depth, ultimately, back-end depth. You look at the depth here, you got Steven Mitchell, you got Randall Cobb, DeAndre Carter, Chad Hansen, Isaac Whitney. Yeah, give me QUARTNEY Davis over most of those guys. So in the 7th round, again, getting more so the benefit of the doubt. I think the late 6th and 7th round wide receivers in this year's draft, you look to past drafts, these are guys that were going in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. So you're getting about a round worth of value just because there's so much depth at wide receiver. And let's just add 2 for the Houston Texans. But more so, he's not going to be nearly as productive, I think, early on as Van Jefferson, who we had them taking in the 3rd round. So there you go, guys. That is my mock draft here for the Houston Texans. Again, a little bit trickier. This is the first and only mock we've had that had a big kind of blockbuster trade before it came out because of the Cooks thing. Because I do think, maybe at the 3rd round, they need more corner help than they would at wide receiver. But Van Jefferson already kind of really compliments what they have there because Randall Cobb's not really a long-term option. He's going to be going on 30. So there you go. That is my mock draft here for the Houston Texans. Should have kept DeAndre Hopkins. All I'm going to say. This should be a mock draft where they have a 1st-round pick because you should have got 1st-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins. But I'm not going to rub it in because I know a lot of Texas fans, you're sick of it. You don't need to hear me tell you how bad it is. You already know how bad it was. So that does it for me today, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy. As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace